Hello, everybody. I am Rick DiClemente. This is Astrology Unplugged. Nice to have you with us tonight. Tonight's a little bit different. I've been looking around through the astrological ephemeris. Matter of fact, I picked up my ephemeris and have been reading it lately. In case you don't know what that is, that's a book that just has numbers. It's all numbers, and you can look really weird by reading this book of all numbers, but it tells you where the planets are at all times for the whole 20th century and then half of the 21st. In pre-computer days, us weird astrologers sat in bed and going like this all the time. Oh, look where that planet is. Look where that planet's going. And it really is informative. Nevertheless, I was trying to decide what to talk about, and I was really leaning away from talking about Pluto because that's all anybody ever talks about. And as you know, I've been a very big proponent of Eris, and I do strongly believe that we are in a Pluto age, and we're also in an Arisian age. So I got to thinking, and I got to looking, and look at this. I'm going to show you where the planets are right now. We're going to look about 3 charts tonight. I'm going to show you where the planets are tonight's show. There it is. Okay, let's get it back on your screen. Now, I'm not looking at anything else except the position of Chiron approaching Eris. Now remember, Eris moves very slowly, 540 years ago around the circle, and Eris has been in Aries since about 1921. So all of us, unless you're really old, all of us have Eris in the sign of Aries. In a little while, my friend Rick will be joining me because this is quite a mouthful of a discussion, and he'll be a big help in defining these eras. So we've all had Eris in Aries all our lifetime. When I was born, it was back at 6. So since my whole lifetime, it's gone from 6 to 24. This is the North Node, just ignore that. And Chiron is much faster, even though Chiron's very elliptical, not a circle at all. Chiron's about every 51 years. And about every 50 years, approximately, Chiron catches up with Eris. And when they conjunct, that's a big deal in astrology. When 2 planets conjunct or combine their energies, that's a really big story. And it defines the coming era. So even though these 2 planets are not going to conjunct until 2025, they're coming rather soon. And in the month of May of 2025, you're going to see this planet catch up with this. And they'll all both still be in the sign of Aries. Well, astrologically, when you get a birth of a conjunction, you take a snapshot. It's like a Polaroid of that split second when they conjunct. And that foretells of the next 50 years or so of what that Eris Chiron era will be like. Try to say it there, you guys. That foretells of the Eris Chiron era will be like. And Rick and I have been digging into this, and I thought it'd be a good subject for tonight, and we have found out that it really is going to be. We're going to be focusing on 3 times, especially 1917, which is one of the times that happened in the late degrees of Pisces, and then it went in 1920, 1921, it went into the sign of Aries. And then we had it again in the year 1972, you'll all recall, which is really intriguing. And now we're getting it again in the year 2025. So Rick and I are going to look at these planets. So you can see that every day you look at this chart, this planet's going to get a little closer to this one. Okay? And it doesn't look like much, but it's a real big deal. Why is it a big deal? Well, Chiron in your life represents two really major things. Most astrologers that follow Chiron follow the side of it that is the wounded healer in mythology. And some of us, more like me, follow Chiron in terms of your destiny. What are you meant to do, etc. So Chiron has both sides. Whereas Eris, we've talked about so much in the last 5 years, Eris is more about what you're seeing now. People being fed up, people that want change, people that want the non-included to be included. They want the people who've been treated unfairly to be treated fairly. Okay, now put those two energies together. Huh. Now you're either an astrologer or you're not. That's the art of astrology, being able to blend such energies. So we're going to start by looking a little bit at what's going on right now. Then I'm going to take you back with Rick. We're going to go back and look at the chart in 1917, which was really a big time when World War I came to an ending and all the revolution came to us in Europe. So many literative and filmmaking, and the invention of the car was not that far behind. The invention of the airplane was not that far behind, really. Then we're going to take a surprising look at what happened in 1972 and look ahead in 2025. So while we're waiting for Erica and we're waiting for Claudia to get to her airport, we want to welcome Rick. We're going to call him Rick C. We got a Rick D and a Rick C. So welcome aboard, sir.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you, and you fit just like a glove, and it's good to have you. Now, I wanted to get your thoughts right away on what's going on now. Now, remember, this Eris has been pretty much in Aries the whole time, and this Chiron has been circulating for 51 years. So since I was about 20, been circulating, heading towards it. And now what we got is Chiron moving faster, is approaching conjunction with Eris in May of 2025. So let's take a look at what's going on now. Let's get your thoughts, Mr. Rick C. Yeah, here we see, okay, here we see tonight's planets. These are where the planets were at 7:04, just a few minutes ago. So this is exactly where the planets are now. And for those of you that aren't used to doing this, the reason we're focusing on this is when you watch the slower moving planets, these are the planets that give you eras, whole eras. And when they conjunct, they speak of changes to the era. Faster moving planets give you Cosmopolitan magazine on the weekend. Okay, that's the difference. So what we see here, Mr. Rick C, is Chiron is getting closer to Eris. Your thoughts?
Well, Eris, slow moving as it is, strikes me as the key character, the place where we're seeing the tension. And Chiron strikes me as the actor that comes in and colors what is going on. So we saw it happen because Eris has been in Aries the whole time, like you said, in 1917, 72, and up to now. So that's the main theme. Identity. It's in Aries. Who are we as individuals, even as a planet, or as a collective? We are now dealing with our own wounds of our identity, and that's interesting that the nodal axis is into the mix here, because I look at that as part of our destiny as
The
well.
nodal axis is the north node here and the south node opposite, and it travels backwards. So
Right.
it's a very karmic point. And the reason Rick's talking about identity is Aries is very much a sign that is about our identity, who we are as individuals.
Now, when we've discussed this, we have oriented because of the planet, we considered Greenwich as describing houses that might affect the whole planet. But here we are in the US, and since you started opening, it dawned on me, oh my goodness, 1917, there is in the US a T-square between the Pluto-Mercury opposition with Chiron T-square that precipitated the flu epidemic of 1918, the epidemic in the late 60s, and then we had the 2020 epidemic. Each time it was going into the American T-square on our chart. So I think there is a connection there too. And there's also a theme of economic shift, because right after the flu epidemic, you had the brief roaring 20s and then the collapse of the market in the later 20s, and then the Dust Bowl. Then I don't think things were so great in the 70s either. Look at the gas lines we had, right?
That was 73.
That was, it's slow moving, but it comes right after it. And I don't think the effects on the economy, as far as what quarantine have done, have really stabilized yet. We have a lot going on, and I think you can definitely say it's all part of an era.
But what do you feel now, since Eris is sitting in Aries? This is what's causing people to be focused so much on, we're going to have to fix the problems now. We're going to have to fix them as individuals now,
Right.
not with heroes around, but we're going to have to get our butt off and start grassroots campaigns to get things started if we're going to solve this quandrum that we're in now. As we watch Eris 20 more years sitting in late Aries for 20 more years, but what do you see, especially in the last 2-3 years, as Eris has been starting to approach Eris, as Chiron is starting to approach Aries?
Well, I see much more dialogue about identity. We're talking about pronouns.
That's right.
Look everywhere you go how much that's an issue. It's in your introductions when you're on a Zoom in some rooms. We're just dealing with gender identity in general. We're facing social justice issues where everybody is trying to figure out who plays what part. You know, where are we looking at who is the aggressor? Who is the victim? Who are innocent bystanders that just got born into the aftermath? There's a lot of questions people are asking and pushing. And I think that's part of the identity that we're trying to have Chiron work through and say, what do you as individuals take from this?
And
It's
also,
our own job to figure out.
also, we're going through the Pluto return in the
Yes.
United States chart, and any return chart has got to be a capital I identity crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Hearing all kind of people say that we're not the country that we thought we were, right? And
Right.
who are we deciding that we want to be? And a lot of that is dependent on us getting rid of the myth of apple pie and John Wayne and adopting the reality of who have we really been. And the
Right.
success of that is going to be how honest we are with ourselves as to who we really were, who we really want to be, instead of hiding from it. And if we hide from it, we're really in trouble.
Yeah, I
So
think
you're correct with an identity issue, on top of the fact that you got Eris being very impatient about wanting to solve things, on top of the fact that Aries is much involved. And Aries is about who are you really, and let's be ourselves.
right. Yeah. And I think those planets beyond Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, will be critical in figuring out how this all unfolds.
Tell somebody in 1917 that you're ready to transition. What? What's that? What do you mean? A transistor? What do you mean transition? Tell
I
people
don't know that they even knew about the parts of a radio back then, right?
well, now it's becoming a common buzzword.
Sure.
Whether it's right or wrong doesn't matter, but a lot of people feel that the best for them is if they transition. And I was a computer programmer for years, and I would always go to the sex field and I would give you two choices, male or female. Now you can't. I don't even know how many choices you get now, but you certainly get more than two.
Absolutely. And how we awaken to recognize with Uranus moving in our lives is going to be a part of it. How Neptune gives us these ideals that we aspire to, but we sometimes get confused as to how well we're hitting the mark of our ideals, and what it is we're supposed to transform with Pluto. That will be an interesting thing to throw in the mix.
Now, interestingly enough, in 1917, that conjunction, let me show you. In 1917, the first of this group, it was April 30th. Okay, you can see the conjunction of Chiron and Eris was happening in late Pisces. Okay, now Eris is pretty consistent in how many years it spends in each sign, unlike Chiron is. But still, it took a long time to go through, over 100 years to go through the sign of Pisces. Now, when you get to the last couple degrees of Pisces, you're talking a big deal here, because you're talking about the end of one zodiac, the end of an age, the beginning of a new one. And then here comes his brother along. Here comes Chiron. So when I picked up the book about the Sabian symbols, which are the meanings of the degrees, and I looked at the 29th degree of Pisces, which is the 359th degree of the zodiac, listen to what it said. The symbol that the psychic picked up for this when they originally wrote this: light breaking into many colors as it passes through the prism, like you see on the cover of Pink Floyd's album. The keynote is the analytical power of the mind necessary for the formation of life processes in their many aspects. This most beautiful and seemingly everlasting experience of the unity will in time be superseded by the need to attend to multiplicity of details. Existence implies differentiation. So what's remarkable about that is all through the sign of Pisces, you're talking about the oneness. And what Rudyard is talking about in this book is the oneness is there, and it's also different. So he's seeing the spectrum, he's also seeing the oneness. He's seeing both. And those two things, if you think about those two principles became paramount at the end of World War I.
I think it's interesting too that as a precursor, there's that Eris on the ascendant. It's opening a ball of wax.
Yes, and we see 3, 4 of the 5 personal planets all in the first house. Now, I must admit, I've been working hard at this. I cannot get the exact minutes that these two planets conjuncted. I don't have the software to do that. I'm still researching how to find it. So I don't know if these two planets are really up here or down here. But we know it's pretty close, and I'll keep you informed on what I find. We do notice here the moon is opposite Uranus, which indicates a real shakeup in the families, in the way families are defined, in the way countries are defined, in the way nationalism is defined. We see a real shakeup happening at the same time that the entire zodiac is just vibrating because this is right at the edge. Eris is sitting right at the very edge the last few days of being in the old zodiac. And I don't know exactly when, about 1920 something, 30 something, it went in to Aries. It probably went into Aries near the time of the Depression. No, I'm sorry. It did go in 1921. That's correct. So anyhow, what you are seeing is this T-square is sending its energy 23, is sending its energy over to Mercury in Taurus, which tells me that it foretold us of an age where we were all going to have to start thinking differently. Not just how the plow goes into the earth, but starting to think about the Industrial Revolution that was taking place, etc.
The women's suffragette movement may also have gotten a boost with that moon opposite Uranus at the time that Eris and Chiron were conjoining.
Yeah, and moon representing women.
And the Uranus being the awakener, the social rebel.
So as we define each 3 periods, it will give you a heads up on how to look forward to the one coming in 2025. Here's the second one. It's going to shock you. You'll remember, well, this is back when I met Marcia in March or so of 1972. It was pretty close. And here you see the conjunction happening at the 12th degree of Aries. So all that time, the Eris has gone from 28 or so to 12, and Chiron has gone all the way around, and they met up again in March, right on the day of spring, just about, of 72. Now look at what 72 was, because I noticed when I was a young teenager, the world was just barely holding on to its final grip of the young hippies in 1969. Oh my God, these people are going to start losing it. Look at the drugs they're doing. Look at this unisex thinking that they're doing. Look at the crazy love that they're doing. Look at what they're doing to marriage and what they're doing to divorce. Everything was shaken and about to explode, which was again these two planets. And when you look at this, this is remarkable. When you look at this meaning, page 59, when you look at the meaning of this degree, and this is the
13.
14th degree, 13th, you're right, the 13th degree of Aries, which is where they conjuncted the symbol that she got, an unexploded bomb reveals an unsuccessful social protest. Think about I was busy in Washington, D.C., going up in the buses and protesting the war, 1972. Keynote, an immature evaluation of the possibility of transforming suddenly the status quo. The symbol pictures the result of particular attempts to resolve the conflict between two concept feelings of order. Resolution by violence fails because the ego power at this stage of the process of individualization is far too strong. The state thwarts the attempt at a popular revolution because these are premature expressions of a consciousness which is not free and can only react wildly to constraint and to a central ruling power. It is thus a symbol of immature refusal to conform in the name of an over idealistic desire for harmony and peace. Sounds like Roger didn't have much to say about the hippie movement, doesn't it? This is the third stage. It's a negative attempt at reconciling the spiritual ideals and the very earthly reality, denying the validity of the latter. And it suggests adolescent frustration. Well, that's really a mouthful. Or when you take a look at these two planets conjuncting in Aries at the time, and the sun is opposite Pluto. So it looks like a much more negative connotation of what a lot of people would say 1972 was about.
I think it's interesting that financial astrologers have their own way of looking at Chiron, that it has some effects there. I'm not familiar with them. But when we look at 1972, where we had the suffragette movement back in the previous conjunction, 72 is precipitating the Equal Rights Amendment here in the US.
Right.
Which allowed women to actually have ownership of financial assets that they previously did not.
And female magazines really shot to the top at that time.
Mm-hmm. So there's an equality that Eris is pushing forward so that she's not ignored at the party.
Yeah, and then you had the famousness of Playboy magazine and their articles. Things really, really changed in 72. Now you had the Uranus-Pluto conjunction of 65, which really caused it, and it split up and it got more and more powerful. Sometimes these conjunctions are more powerful after they release their energy because they're so powerful, they're so chaotic when they're together. So you see in 69 and 70 and 71, that was the end of the Uranus-Pluto revolution of 65. And it's in a way when the two planets were beginning to breathe once again. So 72 was a real revolution. Many, many people think that the greatest music that we ever had in this country was 1971. Look at the music that came out during that time, just astounding. But going back to the Aries, Rick, you
Yeah.
could see in 72, people were starting to get respected for being an individual. I had my friend thrown out of high school in 69 because he was wearing red bell bottoms jeans. Principal said, "You can't come in here like that." He said, "Well, I'll go home." He said, "Well, go home." That was in 69. So they lost their grip in 69, 70. And then Born to Be Wild came out in 69, 68. And things just broke loose. I wonder if it means something archetypally that we lost Jimi Hendrix in 70. We lost Jim Morrison in 70. We lost Janis Joplin in 70. It's kind of intriguing that we lost three really big voices at that time.
Right.
What was really going on?
You know, the folk singers, the musicians who were poets and trying to steer the conscience of the listening audience, which was the world, and it was all over the place, were really doing an important work. And it was much like we're looking into the future. It will require the individuals to awaken. And that's what they were trying to do then. I think they were ahead of their time, but it couldn't wait any longer. You know, it was a message only received by a certain age. And now you see it expands beyond generations.
I,
You
def-
have
I definitely disagree with Dane Rudhyar, who was an Aries himself. He's since deceased, but he did an interpretation of these degrees. I must comment and say that I do think he was overly negative about the 1972 subgeneration. I think things were much more positive than the way he colors it.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, uh, it's always possible to find a few things in any writing, right?
Right.
Yeah, but now we see multiple generations are finding agreement. We're having more communication that crosses generational lines. We're having adult grandchildren talking to grandparents and finding agreement in their outrage as to what they are upset over in the society. Um, that is encouraging to see that type of a focus.
So, in a lot of ways, we did see in 72 the Aryan part of us change, how
Right.
we defined ourselves, which is how you define each other, which is how you define your relationships. So it was not all just this crazy failure like he likes to paint this as. But when you go ahead now and you look into this, and you take a look at what's coming, this is the one that's forming now. It's forming right now. Um, let's go back to the one that is forming. Here's tonight's show. So this is well before 2025. This is the one that is forming now. And you can see the pressure that's building as Chiron gets closer to this Eris. You can see that the Pluto is still quite sharply square to the Eris. The other planets are relatively stable. But you can see that this final 8 degrees 8 degrees that Eris Chiron has to cover until it hits there while going over the nodes. What this implies is, once again, you think you've got things settled the way you're going to address people's individuality, but no, it's not good enough. It's not broad enough. It's not healthy enough to see ourselves the way we really are. So this whole shock that came about with people transitioning is going to get even more shocking. And I don't know what that means. I don't know what that really means. But the thing I do see in this is, and I think this is really good, it is really hard for a Cancerian country like us. We keep looking for somebody to solve the problem. It ain't gonna happen. There is no somebody to solve the problem. It's going to have to be us. And I don't think we're particularly good about that. And I think we're learning that now.
I think there's a learning curve for everyone.
Right?
And honestly, the arbiter of identity must be the individual within the collective. I say within because I think in the reflection of ourselves in the experience of others, we find how we relate differently, and then we find it easier to put it into words. But we put it into words, but it is as we relate to others that we find the differences. We don't find it, it's not like we can sit in a room by ourselves and figure it out.
Well,
We must be in relationship.
It is kind of intriguing to also think about a lot of this is happening as we approach the age of Aquarius.
Right.
Both Pluto going into the sign of Aquarius and the age changing from all these years from Pisces backward into the sign of Aquarius. So I think that we have to put a very strong Aquarian flavor on top of this Aries. And I'm real glad that we do, because Aquarius is far, in my mind, is far more mature than the archetypal essence of Aries, which is mostly about me. What am I getting out of it? I don't see that with Aquarius.
Right. It's more about a collective.
Yeah, and if you're exactly right, and if anything's going to solve this mess that we got, I really think it's going to be an Aquarian energy. Thoughts, anybody? Anybody's got thoughts about any of these charts? Any questions about this? Any notes that you would like to make about this? But I really felt like this was a good idea to bring this up, because this describes the tremor that we're having now. One of the tremors we're having is just pure Eris in the Eris square. But this is another one. This is another symbol of an Arisian age that's about to be unveiled to us. Any thoughts or questions are welcome. Yes, Marcia, let me get you to unmute. Go ahead.
Yes, I wonder if there's a mirror effect of the period after the Spanish flu, 1918 through 1920. 10 years past that time. And now, we're just a bit out of, 20, but say 10 years past 2020. I wonder if there's a mirroring effect.
Intriguing.
The reason that I asked that question is one of the doctors that teaches my course was talking about 10 years after the Spanish flu, there was a tremendous outbreak of Parkinson's disease.
Mm.
And he feels that 10 years after the COVID pandemic, there will be a huge influx of cognitive decline.
Oh, really?
Yes, yes.
Mm.
And I wonder if there's anything you can see like that.
Well,
On
I
Mars.
think you can see it with Mercury, but you got to be very, very careful when you are analyzing the inner quick moving planets when you're trying to get a generational result. I think it's more symbolic to look at the mind and the development of the mind by watching Uranus and by watching Aquarius
Right.
than it is by watching the Mercury. What do you think, Rick?
I actually absolutely was thinking Uranus would be an important place to look at. And, you know, Uranus would have also been interesting to look at the Parkinson's issues because it connects to
Yeah.
the pain body and
Nervous
messes with the-
system.
yeah, the nervous system in general.
Yeah.
And the cognitive decline is also
Sure.
connected with the nervous system.
Yeah.
I think that one of the big reasons that you're speaking about this is this. A Uranian time, which is certainly what we need. And I'm talking pure Uranian concepts, idealism. Lincoln, FDR, both Aquarians. It's only going to succeed to the degree that we agree to work together.
Mhm.
And if we can't get that concept, which is very non-Cancerian, my family, I take care of my family, give them a loaf of bread, I'm not worried about the guy next door. That's anti-Aquarian. So I think a lot of what you're saying is absolutely real and true and dependent upon us being able to start to see. I mean, you start to talk to people nowadays about, hey, we need to work together. And a lot of people look at you like you're crazy. What do you mean work together? What are you talking about? What's that? What's that put into my bank book? What's that put into my bank book? And that's the whole point, is that my bank book think he's got to go. Marcia, your ideas?
Well, it working together is so greatly needed. I can't think of anything more that's more needed for humanity right now.
I think you're exactly right.
I mean, every day we're bombarded with this horrible war information.
Oh yeah, that's
I
just
mean,
horrendous.
and it's just getting worse and worse.
Yeah, and you keep seeing these two battling it out, and you say to yourself, what are they gaining from it? Nothing.
And then look what's happening here and in other countries around the world. People are battling each other because they have an opinion. For Christ's sakes, you
Yeah.
know,
What do
God forbid, you know, that these people are saying, you know, that genocide against the Jews, you know, if you mention that, what about genocide against the Palestinians?
say it's the same thing?
It's the same
And
thing.
they're the ones that already had their own Holocaust. Diane, what are you seeing with your clientele as far as what Marcia's saying? What are you seeing with the general change in people's thinkers, the kind of mind they're thinking with?
Nothing's like standing out. Other than I've said this before, what I'm noticing is people really can't avoid being confronted by core issues. You know, and they're either taking it on and really working with it, I don't have too many that are resisting, but the ones that are having a really rough ride.
Oh yeah?
Yes.
Why
Yeah.
is that? Why is that?
Because it seems like a time where you just cannot get away from dealing with core issues. And if you try to do that, it's like pushing
Well,
water.
what are they battling for? To go back to what time?
I would say they're basically battling the change. Like they're upset that all of these things are happening to them and feel like, they're being punished or something like that versus the
That
people.
that it's happening to them personally.
Right. Yeah. Versus the people that are saying, okay, I see the opportunity here to work through something that's kind of been there for a lot of my life. And now it's like time to step up and deal with it.
Diane, there's a metaphysical idea of what you resist persists.
Absolutely.
How do you see that coming into play with this?
It's just really exaggerated, kind of. It used to be able to resist and like hang out in resistance, and now it's like you cannot hang out in kind of a stuck place. You either deal with it and start to move forward, or it's going to beat you up.
What do you think is going to happen? I'm asking everybody. What do you think is going to happen with the United States place in the world? I think it's a good question.
I will say that I understand with the internet, many Americans, and although I say many, it's still a small portion, but more than once was, are becoming aware of how other nations think, what they think about our nation. So they're broadening their scope to see that the rhetoric we're talking about in the nation is not how we are viewed from outside the nation.
Oh, absolutely.
That's right.
That is coming clear to more people every click of the internet.
That's a good point.
I think a lot of it depends on the next election.
I do too.
Do we have to watch that one?
Well, you know what? I had a really interesting experience last night. So probably many people weren't even aware of it. But on the Young Turks, Marianne Williamson, Dean Phillips, and Cenk, I can't pronounce his last name, but
right.
they were all on the show together commenting on the GOP debate. And it was such a wonderful experience to see them work together, be polite to each other, pretty much be on the same page. And it gave me some hope. I mean, a lot of it depends on them being heard, which is really difficult because mainstream media is just, and not only that, now some states are only allowing Joe Biden on the ballot. They're
right.
Has that gone through?
Well, Florida has done it.
Wow.
North Carolina and Tennessee look like they might. Now, I think these three are going to take action, though, against it.
Sounds like Russia.
Right, exactly. How unconstitutional it is. So it's, I have hope, but on the other hand, if, we end up going the other way, I think I might look at leaving.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are. So the question I have is it the Constitution that is weak, or is it the people that claim to be following?
It's the people. I mean, the basic.
I think it's the people. I think the people thought that Constitution was the end all be all to everything, and they hid behind it as a false sense of security. And now revamping it into 2.0 is a tough story. Come on now, Teresa. You have too much intelligence to stay up in that corner of the screen. And let's get you unmuted and get your thoughts on all this?
Well, I kind of like to look at things, take a simple view of everything. All my life, I basically, you know how people say we should never talk about religion and politics.
Right.
All my life, that's all I ever wanted to talk about. I never want to talk about the weather. I never want to talk about clothes or things that weren't important that I felt. And I always wanted to talk about politics and religion. And even to this day, on this cruise that I went on, I sat next to a Trumper.
Did
And
you?
I could feel it. We were in the main dining hall. I could feel that he was a Trumper. He didn't even have to say anything. And I started talking about politics, because I knew, that's just me. I kind of like to stir things up. I'm one of
Yeah,
these
but you
people.
got that Libra smile. You can get away with it.
Yeah.
So what happened when you did that?
Well, he quickly changed the subject because he didn't want to go there. He made his stance known, and quickly wanted to change the subject. And that was okay. I chuckled to myself, but I initiated it. I initiated that conversation. I also come from the view that everything's going to be okay. I know that things happen. I know people suffer. I know people are suffering everywhere because suffering is something that humans go through. They choose to do it. And not only just physical suffering, like what's happening in the wars, but also emotional suffering. And what I'm learning is that that's all there is to life, is emotions. Emotions take us to places that we don't suffer or places where we do suffer. So to me, I'm in this space right now where emotions mean everything to me. That's all I want to look at in my own life.
Take one time. Let's take a time out for the moment, because apparently Susan did not see the memo the past 2 weeks that we've changed our start time to 7 o'clock. Yes. She got her mouth wide open. Yeah, we have changed. I'm sorry if you didn't see it on Facebook or in the emails, but we have changed permanently to 7. And we'll give you some more time so that you can get your mouth back to normal. I want to ask Teresa something. I really like what you're saying. So what I'm gathering from you, it's no coincidence that all this seems to be coming down to the sign of Aries. You know me, I bring everything back into the zodiac because that's where it emanates from. It all comes back to the individual.
Yes.
What does this, here comes Erica. What does this mean to you that's so Aryan?
You asking me?
Yes, dear.
Well, I'm not all that familiar like you are with the zodiac. But for me, it just means that everything is about ourselves individually. Everything is about me. Everything that happens in my world is all about me. I created it. I created all of you on the screen right now.
Yeah, I think that's a very
I create everything in my life, so I take full responsibility. Doesn't matter what it is.
Very good answer. Yes, thank you much. We have Claudia coming off of her plane down through the
Hey everybody.
hallways of Atlanta. Yeah,
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, dear.
Okay, great. So what I'm about to say kind of brings in what Teresa just said and something you mentioned earlier, Rick D. So I was listening to something yesterday and the woman said there's nobody coming to save us, and there's no one person is going to help it all. No one person can do it all. And it made me think about the United States, and it made me think about how we think there's going to be this one person that's going to change everything. She said, it's really a lot simpler. If I change myself, and if you do the same, and if you do the same, and if you do the same, together, we organically change. But it also made me think about the US, because think about it. The US is a Cancerian country. And to the degree that it is comfortable for us, we will change. But if it isn't, then we won't. Almost like a child, and this is nothing against Cancer. It's just the archetypal energy of that sign.
That's right.
They just, I don't think that we don't have the capacity. I do think that, but we have to think beyond just make everything about me. So in other words, what Teresa was saying is so true. Everything is about ourselves, but at the same time, nothing is. And I don't want to be so, like nebulous and everything, but it is, because I just think that, we rely so much on, outer external forces to change things for us and to make us feel better and to make us happy. And Diane sees it, because she sees people who can't work on their core issues. It's just too much for them. I once heard a therapist say, people will rather, just keep suffering than look at themselves, because they really believe on some level it will destroy them. And maybe it will destroy them to themselves, and they can't bear it.
That's a very good point. Very, very threatening.
Yeah. But all this, back to the Aryan, the Chiron conjunct Eris, what a great symbol for we can, if we choose, it all comes down to how you choose. You can choose to look at, we have a rainy day today. Or we've had some dryness and our plants need water. I wish that more of us thought kind of like we do in this group, which is, if I think this way and you think this way and work on yourself, then we will all do better. But we also we got to get uncomfortable first, I think.
I think you're right. Very, very good. Thank you very much, Claudia. Rick C has his hand raised.
Yeah, I like what you're bringing up about the Cancer nation. And I think it is helpful if we remember that there is a positive and negative expression of every sign. So if the positive is the nurturing, possibly the negative would be nurturing myself so that I can be okay. Right. Well, that's what all the little hostile groups are trying to do as they lash out.
That's right. Others. Yep.
When we go ahead and collectively as a nation look to nurture all, sort of like paying attention to what's written at the bottom of the Statue of Liberty, then maybe we can be living at the higher octave of that Cancer nature.
Well, in the zodiac, like you're talking about, as in this book, you're exactly right, all of you. There's a part of the zodiac that's about taking care of me.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be there. That part has to be there. I got to take care of myself. But when it's seen incorrectly, when it's seen that if I take care of my neighbor, it's going to hurt me, there's the problem. There's the problem. And you can't tell me that ain't all around, because it is. If I give some money, some food to my next door neighbor, how come I didn't get some? That's really destructive. Yeah, thank you, Rick. Let's go to Diane. Very good. You're asked to unmute.
Yeah, I think in some ways, I'm just saying what others have been saying in a different way. But one of the things I think we come here to do is learn how to be responsible creators, that we create either consciously or unconsciously. And so the whole Aries idea is maybe about us realizing that the world ends up being a reflection of us, you know, and how we perceive, our perspective creates our reality. So we were talking about, you know, the idea of Aries and kind of like an expanded view of Aries. It's not just about me anymore. It's about what do I want to create in the world? What kind of world do I want to live in? And I create that.
Well, I think that's exactly right. Now, I thank you, Diane. Now that we woke up Susan so abruptly here, Susan has wonderful Sagittarian ideas a lot of the times. What's on your mind, Susan?
I've moved southward a bit from where I was, so I'm on the move again. And I'm just trying to figure out the topic here.
The topic here was we were talking about how Chiron is every 50 years, and Chiron is approaching Eris now. And it will be exactly conjunct in May of 25. The last time they were together was in 1972. The last time before that was 1917. So we showed a chart of 1917 when those two planets conjuncted, again in 1972, and now we're seeing it come, it's approaching right now. And as you know, right now, Eris is being very loud and insistent upon us all treating each other equally. And when you involve Chiron, Chiron puts it into the wound. How are we going to address our wound that we've had for so many years in regards to that?
So a couple of things come to mind. One is my association with Chiron is not just the wound, but the healer.
That's right.
Chiron is the healer. And
That's right.
in 1917, World War I was coming to an end.
Right.
And in 1972, the Vietnam War was coming to an end.
Right.
So it seems to me that there may very well be some healing with regard to the divisions of the nation coming over the next year.
Well, yes, and in 1918, you got the flu epidemic. In
But
19...
that's separate. I'm trying to, there's nothing comparable to that in 1972, though.
Vietnam. There was another flu epidemic
in 72, 73.
In the late 60s. That's
1957 would be the last big flu epidemic I remember hearing about.
There was one in the late, I think, 69. It was a 51-year cycle after the 1918 flu, and it juxtapositions right between COVID and 1918 Spanish flu.
Well, then the timing is right because we've just come through a big flu of sorts.
Now you're seeing a rebirth. You're seeing very much a rebirth of Chiron energy going on now. And Chiron's a difficult planet to talk about, but it's got a really positive, strong side, being the healer, wanting to help out, having those Virgo impulses to want to lend a hand. So I think there's a lot of good things on the future for us.
And where
Chiron is also the teacher.
Let me show it to you.
It's in Aries, isn't it?
Yes. Since you didn't miss the beginning of the show, here's where the planets were when the beginning of this show started. You can see that Eris is standing still pretty much, and here comes Chiron. get 8 more degrees, and it won't get here till
Yeah.
May of 25. May of 25. Did you have something to add, Sean? He says no.
Right.
He says no. So back to Susan.
Can
Yeah,
you-
so if it's towards the end of Aries
It is.
and
What
but
does
not
April
yet
appear?
picking up the flavor of Taurus.
Not
But
yet.
Oh, we're far from Taurus. It's just
however, Aries is more mature at that point.
right.
So I would think it would be less dangerous under more maturity.
The point of the conjunction is that the individual is going to have to get off of its butt to bring about solutions instead of an Aquarian or a Piscean group effort. It's very much pointing towards the Aries in us. The Aries that's in us is the real me.
The setting of intention and the taking action.
Yeah, in 72, I remember finding my major, finding my family, doing a lot of things that moved Rick forward. And I watched a lot of people around me in 72 do the same thing, find their individuality. And that's
So on a
what we need now.
on a
Claudia
personal
wants to see Claudia wants to see the 25 chart. Excuse me one moment. Let me go get it.
Yeah, because I'd like to know what degree
Oh, here it is. Here's the one.
conjunction it-
I've already talked to you about the degree in 25. Here it is. Let me get it on your screen.
As I was playing around before the episode started, I moved it down to the second. And when you put it down to the second, the sun moon gets even tighter so that they are at 6 degrees of Gemini is when it actually occurs, that there is a full-on full moon in Gemini at the same time, if that has any input.
I couldn't get these to display the seconds.
Yeah,
That was the problem. But
right.
yeah, go ahead with your point.
If anybody's interested, that full moon in Gemini is going to be bringing everybody to find their words, perhaps.
It's going to be the seventh degree of Gemini. Let's look it up.
Right.
Let's look that one up. 7 Gemini is a well with bucket and rope underneath the shade of a majestic tree. Man's primordial faith in the hidden sustaining power of life. And it's all about the fundamental trust in and cooperation with life.
Mm.
That's intriguing. Yes,
It
Susan.
is.
Yes, Susan, go ahead.
It's all about me, I heard earlier. Well, I'm just going to say that this chart looks pretty good, I think, for me, for my chart. I've got sun opposite moon at that point. I mean, that moon is going to oppose my sun, and moon will become quite powerful with the sun moon conjunction there. And then Jupiter will be pretty nearly sitting on top of my moon natally. And Mars will be trining my sun, while Saturn will be trining my midheaven.
And the main point here is what's going on in your chart and everybody's chart at the 26th degree of Aries. This is where the conjunction's happening. What's going on at 26 degrees Aries? I don't think we read that degree, but that's a very optimistic thing that I read in this book earlier. That's page what? Page 287. So that conjunction that's coming in 2025 yeah. No, wait. This is page 68. That's right. That's the conjunction coming in 2025. When
And
he,
that's why I was wondering what degree it was, because my son, my natal son, is at Aries 28.
when he's 6, you always go to the next degree. We're going to 26 degrees of Aries. A man possessed of more gifts than he can hold, which means obsession by potentiality. This is a warning. That's what this degree means. The mind which finds itself confronted with a totally unfamiliar, as yet unexperienced type of potency, finds it difficult at first to adjust to its new world of perception and possibilities of action. He may rush ahead excitedly and lose his bearings. He should try to reach a state of calm watchfulness and to learn that this level too, there are limits and restrictions, which is laws of expression in this new type of order. The whole meaning of this is a warning against undertaking more that is safe for you to take. Don't bite off more than you can chew. That's the one coming. Don't bite off more than you can chew. And you can see an awful lot of movement stirring now where people want to bite the whole damn apple and think it's just simple.
That degree also, you shared a thought about obsession. And when you look at the Queen de Chile between Mars and Pluto of 165 degrees, obsession and determination are key words in understanding that aspect.
Okay, for the viewers, a quin de Chile is an aspect that's minor. It's 165 degrees or 15 degrees shy of an opposition. So this Pluto and Mars are exactly quin de Chile, 165 degrees apart. And as anybody knows, when you combine Mars and Pluto together, you've got an individual that's ready to go on a maniacal spree. You got to watch for that.
And that happens at the same time you have Sun and Moon in Gemini as a full moon. I think there's going to be a lot of verbalization during that time.
Yeah, this is a rather maniacal, individualistic hyperness. You know, that just because I'm putting my foot down, I'm right and I can win. And it's just too much too narrow-minded. So what are we seeing? We're seeing the one in 1917 was really pretty rosy. The one in 72, he didn't like at all. And this one here, he's got full of warnings. So this again is using your Mars, but not using it in a heavy-handed way. Use your Mars. Use your Mars to rise above your Cancerian timidness and worried nature. But use it in balance. Getting your Mars in sync with your Cancer is really, really critical now.
Rio?
Yes, Erica.
I'm also noticing that Saturn is at 0 degrees Aries at that time. And it's kind of focused on that Pluto. So Saturn in Aries is the one that's going to have to be the regulator. And is going to maybe start everything because it's the 0 degree right there.
And it's with Neptune. 1 degree
Which doesn't
away.
hurt, which doesn't hurt and does hurt depending
Well, it's a hard, it's a
What
hard, it's a
frame of
hard thing.
mind you're in at the moment, right? What delusion or spirituality you might be in. So
It's hard, it's a hard combination to translate. But I find it intriguing that we got all these planets in Gemini at the time that these two are so heavy. What does that say to us? It says to me that a
Mhm.
lot of this is going to be about talk and thinking and theory and talk instead of action. So an Aries, we got a line here. An Aries is only going to succeed through activity. Get act on it. So when we rewind now, go back to the beginning of the show, what we're seeing now is a coming conjunction that's very era specific. It's going to be related to that wonderful launch in 1917, to that questionable turning point in 1972, and to the warning of 2025. So again, we keep seeing this over and over. The Arisian, we're not going to put up with it. We've got to solve it now. But what we're seeing in this chart, we've got to solve it through me taking an action. And I don't know about you, but I'm looking around, seeing a lot of people that are looking for the cavalry to come up behind and save everything. I don't see a cavalry. Rick, you see a cavalry?
Only in the collective. We have to be the heroes of our own journey.
I don't see a cavalry, but I see some authoritarians that think that they can give us the answer. They'll just take care of everything.
You got that right. I got all the answers.
Susan, I liked what you were saying earlier about looking for the healing aspect. And when we were talking about the 1917 era, we were looking at how Eris, who was feeling late to the party and disenfranchised, there was the women's suffragette movement that was ushered in. And then in 72, the Equal Rights Amendment. So maybe something may shift there also. Could that be an advance in women's rights yet further? Maybe there may be some change coming about with respect to women and other disenfranchised people.
Well,
and
the Equal Rights
marginalized.
Amendment didn't pass.
Pardon me?
The Equal Rights Amendment did not pass.
That was around 72, 75.
It still has not passed.
What makes you think you're equal? Where's this crazy idea coming from?
We're not equal, Rick. We're better.
Oh, I forgot about that. That's what I thought. Okay.
That's my Eris and Lilith speaking. Sorry.
That's okay. That's fine.
I'll pull in my claws. Sorry.
That's fine. Well, we may as well bring this one to an end tonight. Very interesting discussion. I don't know what they're going to do, but very soon we're going to be hosted by Claudia and Rick C. And they're going to pull up some subject that's going to entertain us all. I'm not sure when that will be. And I'm sorry you got the wrong signal, Susan, but it's incentive to get on the mailing list because the mailing list lets you know these changes. So it came out of the blue last week to change the starting time to 7 o'clock.
See, I'm on your mailing list, but I don't think I got a mailing this time. Gonna have to check and get back on.
Yeah, well, please check it, and I'll check it for you. And everybody, thank you for joining us. I hope tonight gave you some reason to think about what's going on, because not only does the 2025 show us what's coming, but we can understand some of the rumblings now that are going
Right.
on. And I think the more we can understand rumblings now is going to help us understand this thing called a coming election.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Given that my son is at Aries 28, should I be scared or excited about this conjunction?
You never take it as either one. Never. No. This is in your chart. This is a very major symbol of a launch forward for you. What is it that Aries do? They launch forward to test themselves to see how good they are at something. Okay, there's reason to believe that your retirement is imminent. Really strong reason with that, which tells me also that there's strong reason that held you back all these years. Why did you retire before this? That's not an Aries thing. So I think what we're looking at with you is retirement, and a launch of the real you. And you're going to shock some people because you're going to launch the real you that's been in there thinking and processing all this time. And I think that when you do, you're going to feel very young.
Good.
I think the
I think
newer, I think there should be a newer concept of retirement to re-engagement in life for a universal purpose. You know, as you pull away from the work of focus on yourself, you can focus on the work of what you're bringing into this world.
Very good, Rick.
Let's start a campaign.
Rick for president.
I've always known that I'm not going to stop doing things. I'm going to stop. as a
But I
psychic
do
woman.
think if you look, something's been growing in you for
Absolutely.
at least as long as Chiron has been in Aries.
Mm.
And that's been growing, and it's 8 degrees away now.
Yep.
It's going to get closer and closer. And I think when, let me give you a clue. When I had clients for years, they would say, well, am I allowed to do that? Well, should I do this? Well, what about that? Well, what do you think about that? And then in March of 03, I forget the date, in March of 03, Uranus left Pisces and entered Aries. And everybody became an Aries for a while. And everybody I was talking to says, I know what I'm going to do. Don't ask me nothing. I'm sure of myself. I know what's going on. Here I come. I'm going to do it. And for a while, everybody turned into an Aries. Everybody was very sure of themselves. That's a gift that Aries has. Sure of themselves. Other people are not that way. So I think that's what's coming your way.
It's very much in line.
If so, send your donations to the following box number.
I was just going to say that's very much in line with the soul reading that I had with Deneen.
Oh, Denise, very good. Hey, thank you all. Marcia, Bud, everybody. Good night.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
See you next
Thanks,
week.
Carol.
Have a good night, everybody.
We'll get to see
Great to see
Claudia's
you.
face next week.
Next week, yes, I'll be in the flesh.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye,
Bye.
all. Many
Thanks.
blessings.
Have a good earlier night.